It seems that he's finally back.
Yes, but it seems coming home is still somewhat of a process.
So this week, Parashat Vayishlach, one of these Parshas that we have mentioned and discussed many times in many, many different videos, because one of the main things in this Parsha is Am Yisrael getting their name of Israel. The concept of who Yaakov is, what Yaakov goes through in life. And as part of that, in this week's Parsha, we find Yaakov being named Israel twice. One by the Malach, and then later on by HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually officially giving him their name. And what I want to discuss today and actually try to understand is everything that goes on over there around that name giving by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Yaakov. Because first of all, why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell Yaakov to go build a Mizbe'ach? Shouldn't this be something that's coming from Yaakov himself, from his inner self, wanting to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for saving him? But even more so, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him to go build a Mizbe'ach for the God that revealed to him when he was running away from Esau. What does that even mean? Why do you have to build a Mizbe'ach for a God revealing to him while he was running away? Yaakov was already after it. He already faced Esau. Why not build a Mizbe'ach to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for saving him from Esau and for saving him from the time at Lavan? But also when you continue reading the Psukim, there's so many other questions on these Psukim, just to name out the couple. First of all, why does Yaakov rename the place again Beit El? Didn't he name the place Beit El in the beginning of Parshat Vayetze? Why does the Torah say that Yaakov gave it the name again? But probably the biggest question here, right after Yaakov builds the Mizbe'ach, and just before HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealed to him and changes his name, we find a pasuk telling us that Dvora, the meineket of Rivka, Dvora, the nurse of Rivka, died and they buried her over there. What does that even have to do with the whole story? Why is this relevant to Yaakov changing his name to Israel? What's going on over here in this whole process of Yaakov changing his name to Israel? How is it related to everything Yaakov went through, and what is this all about?
Yeah, I agree. And I think the first thing to really understand is, what does this even mean that Hashem is telling him, go to the God that revealed himself when saving you? I mean, that's him. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking. Speak to me. I'm right here. I'm talking to you now. You need to go somewhere else to speak to me? He's now speaking to him. So what is really going on here? And I think that if we look at the fuller context, we spoke about last year, about Yaakov, who used to be the Ish Tam Yoshev V'Alim, the spiritual person, disconnected from this world, and suddenly had to take on this new role of getting Esav's brachot, of going out to deal with the world, of dealing with Lavan. And he finally comes home, and we see this new Yaakov, this Yaakov who's able to deal with this world. And as we said last year, the battle between Yaakov and the Malach is not described as a battle between Yaakov and a Malach. It's described as Yaakov and an Ish. And Chazal say it's the Malach of Esav, Sarosh el Esav, meaning it's a Malach that represents the Esav's role in the world, the physical role. This is Yaakov's ability to deal with this world. And we've spoken about this in depth. And when he receives the name from the Malach, as we mentioned, it doesn't say you're getting the name Yisrael because you're able to deal both with humans and with the gods, like me, the Malach. The opposite. It says, Ki sarita im Elokim ve'im anashim, meaning the bigger chiddush is that you're able to deal with people. And again, the Malach is called an Ish. That's the only Ish in those Psukim. So the fact that Yaakov knew how to deal with Malachim, knew how to deal with Elokim, that's from day one of Yaakov. And the bigger chiddush is that Yaakov is now able to deal with this world. And this is why he gets that name, Yisrael, who's able to deal with both. And then we really see this continues, the story with Shechem. And we see it changes, as the pasuk says here, that everyone's scared of Yaakov. Everyone's scared of Yaakov. Yaakov's not the one who is running away from Esav anymore. This is Yaakov who's here in this world, acts in this world. He's not that disconnected spiritual guy anymore. And turns to him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and says, everything's great and all you've achieved is great. And this is how you're going to act in the world. But you haven't completed your task. You haven't completed your journey until you're able to go back also to that original self. Until you're able to go back to that Yaakov. Yeah, the Yaakov who was running away from Esav, who was running away from the world and didn't know how to deal with the world. It was all spiritual. Only once you're able to also act in this world, but also go back to that original Yaakov, to that spiritual place, only then have you come full circle. Only then will you really deserve the name as Hashem gives it to him, Ki sarita im Elokim ve'im anashim batuchal, that you're able to be in both worlds. You're also able to be the one who's in this world, acting in this world, influencing the world with your spiritual powers in the physical physical world, but also to be the one who also knows how to disconnect, who also knows how to go in places that are beyond this world, who knows how to not get pulled down by this world, to be those two, to be both that Yaakov from before, that Yaakov from Beit El, the Yaakov with the Malachim going up and down that ladder, to be that Yaakov with the ladder. And what is the ladder? The ladder was a ladder that goes to the skies and down to the earth, and the Malachim are going up and down, and Chazal argue whether they're going up and down the ladder or they're going up and down Yaakov. Either way, Yaakov is that ladder, because Yaakov is the one whose head is in the sky and his feet are on the ground. So now we've seen his feet on the ground and he's learned to have his feet on the ground. But we have to go back to that ladder and make sure his head is still in the sky. Only once he's able to have those both is he able to be that ladder where the Malachim can go up and down, where he can connect both worlds. And this is what we see here. We see Yaakov turn to his family and say, it's great and we're back home, but we need to really go back home. And he turns to them and says, Hasiru et Elohei anacham mikilbechem. Make sure you're totally clean from any avodah zarah, from anything from behind. I know your intentions are well and we're a good family and all, but we have to be able to really climb up and see that we've come out pure of this journey and we're able to go back to that most pure place before it all started. So Hasiru et Elohei anacham mikilbechem. Let's clean ourselves up. Let's purify ourselves up and go up to Beit El and go up to that place, as he says, where Elohim revealed himself to me before it all began. That's when he builds this new Mizbe'ach, and that's when he can finally fully get his name Yisrael.
Yeah, it seems really to be like what you're saying. You know, when we think about the name Yisrael, and like we've discussed this many times in the past, the concept of Am Yisrael, the concept of us, of our job in this world, like we learned in the past week in the Daf Yomi that Yaakov Avinu never died because we are continuing his mission, we are continuing his name. The whole idea behind Am Yisrael is being able, like you were just saying, to be with our feet in the ground, with our legs in the ground, in the Gashmius, in the Olam Hazeh, but with our heads up high in the Shemaim, in the Ruchnius, in the spiritual level, and combining them both together in order to make the world we live in a better and a higher and a more holy place. And really reading these Psukim, like you were saying, it seems to be this final transformation, this final approval, this final process HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Yaakov he has to go through in order to finally get that seal of his name, Israel, being a person, Shesarita im Elokim v'im anashim v'tuchal, being the person that can handle everything in order to do in this world what's needed. Because really, when you think about it, and when you look at the Psukim, this is not the first Mizbe'ach Yaakov is building. Yaakov built a Mizbe'ach just when he arrived in Shechem, just before the whole story with Shechem. And over there, he really thanked HaKadosh Baruch Hu for saving him from Esau. So in Yaakov's eyes, he already did that Mizbe'ach. The first Mizbe'ach that Yaakov actually built for HaKadosh Baruch Hu was already done, was already made. Here, this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling Yaakov, now it's time to officially finish the process you've been going through. From the day you bought the Bchorah from Esau, through taking the brachot, through living with Lavan and going through everything you had to go with them, having the 11 Shvatim and preparing yourself to come back to Eretz Yisrael, now it's officially time for you to finalize that process. And really, when you talk about someone who's Rosho B'Shamayim, who's up the sky spiritually, but is also still connected to the ground, still in this world, in the Gashmiot, in the materialistic world, you have to remember that there are two very big risks. First of all, the main risk, as we always talk about, is the risk of being dragged down and drifting after the Olam Hazeh, like we know from so many Mekorot, and we've mentioned in the past, the Gemara in Shabbat about Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, that even the biggest rabbis, once you deal a lot with the Olam Hazeh, once you deal a lot with the materialistic world, you do get carried after. No matter how strong you are spiritually, you might end up going after it. But even more than that, if you're really trying to hold on to the ground, but also hold on to the spiritually, what could happen though is slowly drifting two sides apart, and then you'll just snap and break. And that's why if you are trying to live in the more physical, materialistic world, you do need sometimes to take a pause, take a stop, and detach yourself from that world and go all the way into the spiritual world. And maybe this is exactly what Dvora meneket Rivka resembles here, and what the whole idea of her being mentioned is about, because there is a machloket in the Rishonim what she was actually doing here, whether she was sent back by Rivka in order to call Yaakov, or she was with Yaakov the entire time at Lavan's house. But maybe the idea of Dvora meneket Rivka, having somebody to nourish Yaakov, to feed him, the home that he grew up in, the spiritual place that he grew up in, keep on reminding him of that spiritual life that he has throughout the entire time at Lavan, throughout the entire time running away from Esau. That's what helped Yaakov stay strong and stay connected, and make sure that even though his legs are on the ground, still head is in the spiritual Rosho B'Shamayim, and he still has these two worlds together. And like you were saying, this is what brings Yaakov Avinu to the place where finally over here he can stop running away from who he was or what he is. Is he more spiritual? Is he more materialistic? And once he stops running away, way, so the other people around him, the other nations around him, see that he knows exactly who he is, see that he has both sides, and he's capable of holding all the sides and having confidence in all these sides. This is what puts the fear on the nations around him, and what brings him to the place where finally he can get the name Israel that he gives on over to us.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying and with what Dvora represents. If we look at Rashi, who says that Dvora was sent by Rivka to bring Yaakov back because Rivka said that she will send someone to bring him back, it's exactly that. Meaning she represents the one who's able to help him come back home. Not just halfway, not part of the way, all the way home, to that original home. She's the one who does that. And when he succeeds in going, not when he's in Shechem, when he goes back to Beit to that same place where he was before it all began, when he was still escaping, once he's there, then she's really completed her mission. If she was Dvora Mineket Rivka, meaning she was already the one who helped Rivka in the darkness of the house of Lavan and Betuel to be able to grow and become who she was. To bring out someone like Rivka in that environment means that she had this strength of being able to be surrounded in a challenging environment and pull you out of it and raise you up. She comes with Rivka from there to the home of Yitzchak. She comes to bring Yaakov out of there, or stays there to help him survive it and go through what he goes there. And when he does finally come back, then she really has completed her role. Maybe this is also the words of the Pasuk that are a bit strange. When Hashem gives Yaakov the name, he doesn't just say your name is Israel. He says your name is Yaakov. Ready? Now I'm going to give you the name Israel. Meaning, if you were stuck there and got the name Israel and you never came back to the original Yaakov, then you wouldn't really deserve the name Israel. But because you've come back to that original Yaakov, now you're really ready to go through that full transition and really receive the name Israel for you and for the generations to come.
Beautiful. And really looking at the Psukim like that, seeing Yaakov going back to Beitel, where he started his process, where he started the journey to become Israel, and finishing it now when he's back in Beitel, starting with Hashem Nitzav Alav, Hashem being on him, and Yaakov building a matzeva for that Nitzav and turning it into a Mizbe'ach La'el Anira Elav, to the God that was revealed to him. This is the process really Yaakov went through, and what brings us into the name Israel. And we're out of time, so we'll just mention that last year again we discussed the whole battle between the Malach of Esav and Yaakov and what exactly that means. We'll link that video right now. Make sure to take a look. It is one of the more special videos that we discussed many times throughout the year. And also, of course, as usual, if you've liked this video, please feel free to like it, comment on the video below, share it with your friends, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel.
Shkoyach, Tuvia, Shabbat Shalom.
Shkoyach to you, good Shabbos, and we'll talk again next week. For more Talking Torah videos on different topics, check out our YouTube channel.